listener from the Dungeon Crawler Network, here with a new build for the Stamina Dragonknight for the Morrowind expansion. The new patch has been quite controversial. A lot of people haven't liked the new changes to the resource management aspects of the game. I know Stamina Dragonknights and Stamina Templars were hit pretty hard. And I think I found a combination which helps balance the lack of, or the reduction of, major mending from the game. This build is designed for a non-champion point environment, and it actually shines really well in the battlegrounds. This is a tanky build with a little bit of teeth to it. So let's go ahead and get into the items. So we've got 5 piece of the new Daedric trickery. Chest, boots, legs, and hands, and also the shield. All impenetrable. Now I want to look at the 5 piece set bonus here. While you're in combat, you get one of 5 random major buffs for 10 seconds every 20 seconds. Eligible buffs are major expedition, major protection, major mending, major heroism, and major vitality. As a Dragon Knight, I get to use all of those and take advantage of them. 4 more than anything, because of course they give me major mending from my igneous shields. It's only for 2.5 seconds now, but that is enough to make a difference, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. You can stack this with the major vitality buff, giving you plus 30% healing done, plus 30% healing taken, which is a nice buff. And also, if you get plus 30% healing done via the major mending, it stacks nicely with the major protection, negative 30% damage reduction, which is very good. I don't have to talk much about major heroism, which powers a Dragon Knight quite effectively through his passive abilities here. That provide resources for when he uses an ultimate. And for this build being tanky as it is, it helps me bring up my spell wall more quickly. Of course, Major Expedition is a wonderful addition to the Dragon Knight toolset. One of the caveats to being a heavy, tanky Dragon Knight is lack of mobility, which it shores up quite nicely. And finally, major mending. I mean, you can't really stack major mending with the one we already have, but it's nice to have it for 10 seconds. The second piece armor set that I'm running with it is the Blessed Meridia set. Nicely buffed since the patch, adding 2,578 physical and spell resistance, which is nice. Actually puts my character up to 28k spell and 25k physical resistance, keeping me nice and tanky. And the 5 piece of this Blessed is actually underrated, and I've been enjoying using it quite a bit. When you block an attack, you have a 33% chance to blind the attacker, causing them to miss all of their attacks for 5 seconds. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. So the important part here is the fact that they're blinded. They're not blinded against you, they're blinded, period. So in a battleground setting, you're removing them from the theater of combat almost for 5 seconds, which can make or break an encounter. It also gives your bonuses from the Daedric trickery set extra strength there, and it lets you take advantage of them a lot easier for 5 seconds. And it also helps generate your ultimate as well. And the Meridia set sits in the belt, rings, and necklace slots, and also the weapon slots. That's what I'm using. So it's active on my sword and shield bar, as well as my two-handed bar, with the Daedric trickery running on just the sword and shield bar. The second set that the third set I'm using is the Tremorscale, which is also an incredible tool set for the for Dragonknights in that it snares half the time when you use a taunting ability, which is a 70% snare for 4 seconds. It got nerfed in the Morrowind patch, but still you can keep it up on a single target or a group of targets if they're silly enough to stay grouped together. It also adds a little bit of bite, doing about 6.6k damage every 4 seconds. So it's what, 3k before resistances. It's not a whole lot, but it's nice. It adds a little bit more oomph to my attacks, considering I'm running 2 defensive sets with this. You can use poisons in the battlegrounds or in Cyrodiil. I like to use the Drain Stamina one. I'm sure a lot of others are effective. I like the Drain Stamina one mainly for the restoring the 238 stamina per second. But the increased cost of 30% to your enemy is also quite nice. On the two-hander, I just stick with the regular disease enchantment because when I'm charging in, I kind of want to do a little bit of extra burst with it. So that's what I'm staying with right there. With this setup, I'm running at 3000 critical resistance. This is with CP on, so just take off 1000 there, I suppose. 30k stamina, 26k max health, and 14k magicka. And the potions I like to run are the Essence of Immovability, making me immune to knockback and disabling effects for 15.7 seconds, and granting me Major Expedition, which increases my movement speed by 30% for 47 seconds. That's actually quite a long time, and quite crucial for a Dragonknight to get from point A to point B. And it also restores 7k stamina, increases my stamina recovery quite nicely. Now, as far as skills go, I like to stick with my Resolving Vigor, even though through the nerfs it's still a useful heal. Pierce Armor, this is on my front bar. 5k damage and reduces their armor and spell resistance, which is pretty good. Also procs the Tremorscale. Igneous Shield, I don't care about the shield really, it's usually gone in seconds. The major mending for 3 seconds though is nice, and that's what I use it for. And it also regenerates a little bit of my stamina, which was also nerfed in the Morrowind patch, but it still helps. I'm still going to use it. Dragonfire Scale, that's it's almost a must right now with the current magicka epidemic that there is in PvP right now. It tells people to bugger off. Stop casting at me. Stop casting at me. I'm only stamina. This is also almost required. I was using defensive stance, which means I could keep it up for 30 seconds and it would reflect the first spell cast at me. But that precious stamina in the current setup, in the current patch, is much more precious than magicka. So I went with Dragonfire Scale. Reverberating Bash, very important. Using it in conjunction with the Tremorscale to lock down opponents. Spell Wall, the go-to ultimate for this build. Keeping this up to reflect those spells in PvP is a must. You could probably classify it as an offensive ultimate too, because if you're reflecting spells back at your enemy, take down their shields and whatnot. Very important there. On the back bar, Critical Rush, just to get that extra burst and my gap closer. Venomous Claw, drop a dot ahead, probably one of the most powerful dots in the game. Molten Armaments with the buffs to heavy attack. My playstyle is heavily heavy attack, pardon the pun. Adding 40% damage to that is probably a smart thing to do. Executioner, just for finishing off opponents. And Rally for the heal, mostly, and the Major Brutality, which isn't as important in this build. But the heal over time is very important. Take Flight, very good ultimate, very cheap, does a decent amount of damage, and is also my second gap closer. Use it for closing on flag carriers and getting out of trouble. Now, as for the Mundus, I'm staying with the Shadow. My crit is only 22%, but The 12% critical damage is of good value here. You might want to go with Serpent to get a little bit more sustain. But as a full heavy Dragonknight, it's not as important if you manage your heavy attacks appropriately. As far as the food goes, I prefer the tri-stat foods, just so that I can have a little bit more magicka in my repertoire. I usually go with you can either go with braised rabbit for the max stam and max health, but longfin pasty with melon sauce is quite delicious, and it actually gives you the 4k to 3 stats, which is I believe is the best way to go for this build. Well, I hope you enjoy running this build. I've got a couple of PvP videos coming up which detail how this build is played. You can play it in a couple of different ways. You can go in there with reckless abandon and then shield up, or you can play it a little bit more tactically and support your support groups by peeling, or with the reverberating bash, or with Tremorscale. You can also run in a tank train or a magic train, debuffing and snaring your targets, so that it makes them easier to be taken down by the rest of your team. And for catching up with flag carriers and snaring them down. So if you have any comments, please place them in the comment section of this YouTube video, or you can join our Dungeon Crawler Network forum, and we can discuss the build here for any additions or changes that you might want to voice. Thank you. Enjoy.